Welcome to a special edition of Figma for EDU Early Career Live Streams. Today we have a special guest and we are going to be talking about crafting a compelling case study deck. Some introductions. My name is Miggy. I'm a designer advocate on the Figma for Education team. I'm also joined by Meher, designer at Riley. Meher is an intuitive designer, a community builder, and a creative leader. She leverages her multicultural background to execute creative and data-driven solutions to bring clarity to the world around us. Currently, she's the head of design at Riley, a digital co-parenting app focused on the empowering the parenthood journey. Previously, she led design at Etsy, healthcare.com, Jackpocket, and Zola. When Meher is not playing with pixels, you can find her refurbishing furniture, playing board games, or exploring a new cafe. Meher, what is your favorite cafe drink?
My favorite cafe drink, my go-to, I would say, is a iced latte. Like it could be dead of winter, I will still have an iced drink. And if I'm outside of America, I will always try a dirty chai just to see what it's like in like different places. Yeah.
Absolutely love that. I love a dirty chai. And also, I love that you stick to your convictions, and whether or not it's cold outside, you're doing
Yeah,
that
just
iced latte.
consistency, you know?
Got to bring that consistency. I love it. So if you are in the chat, please let us know what is your favorite cafe drink or beverage of choice. Meher, I'm going to hand it over to you. So take care.
All right. Thank you, Maggie. That was a very lovely intro. Hi, everyone. It's really good to be with you over here today. And I'm really excited to share some like behind the scenes nuggets of like what you can do to make a very compelling case study deck. So just to add to the lovely intro Miggy gave me, I was born in India, but I grew up in Dubai and I've been based in New York for the last 12 years. I did do a short stint in Guatemala and San Francisco, and I'm actually currently in the middle of moving out of America and exploring life elsewhere, maybe. It's sort of in the air. So if you're someone who's in Porto, Portugal, or the UK, or Copenhagen, or Barcelona, send me some love and good vibes, and maybe our paths will cross sometime. I've also been a creative my entire life. It's the earliest memory I have, and I have a background in psychology and design. I love complex problems, and I try to work in spaces that are very service driven. So that being said, today I want to help you all figure out how to really make your entire case study deck something that is very compelling. So for those of you who haven't been through this, the interview process for a product designer is pretty long, unfortunately, and it's been like this for a while now, but it is what it is. So it tends to starts with a recruiter call, which is about 30 minutes. This is when a recruiter is essentially asking you all of the inputs that they need to put into their forms. It's basically them seeing that your LinkedIn matches up with what you're saying, and your background is what they're looking for. If that goes well, they go to the hiring manager and they tell the hiring manager, this is a good person, let's talk to this person. And then you talk to the hiring manager. Maybe this might take like a week or two. By then, you speak to the hiring manager for about 30 minutes and they ask you a lot more specific stuff about your work, whether that's schoolwork or like a previous job, whatever that might be. They ask you a lot more specifics, things like what are you looking for in your next role or what are your strengths? And tell me about a project you're really proud of. Then, if that goes well, you go on to the case study review. This is usually 45 minutes to 60 minutes. It's where you spend about 30 minutes showcasing two of your work, two of your projects in depth, and then 15 minutes of Q&A. Sometimes at some places, this is coupled with a 3 to 4 hour panel after that. What that essentially means is that there are about 6 to 8 people reviewing this case study that you're presenting. And then for the rest of the day, you meet with each of them for like 30 minutes each. They each judge you on different things like collaboration, leadership, research, et cetera, et cetera. And this differs from place to place, so it's not exactly the same. Some places will break it out. They'll say, okay, present your case study to us. And if that goes well, you have a next round, which is the panel with a bunch of people, as well as some kind of like design exercise. Design exercise might be critiquing your favorite app. Let's say it's Spotify, Pinterest, Headspace, whatever you want it to be. And or it can also be a whiteboarding exercise. Whiteboarding exercise is essentially something where you are given a problem and they want to see what it's like to work with you. So they'll have you pair with two people on the team, and the three of you, four of you together come up with some kind of design. So as you can tell, these are the most lengthy parts of the process. And if all of that goes well, then you get to everyone's favorite part, the offer stage. So this process can take roughly 1 to 6 weeks, and that's being very positive. Usually it can take about 2 months. So it is definitely a process where you have to be patient. So today, what we're going to talk about is the packaging. So I want to hear from you all about the best gift you've ever gotten. Put it in the chat. I want to know. Meanwhile, I'm going to tell you the best gift I've gotten. There's so many. I feel very blessed. But something really sweet that I got was many, many years ago. And my dad gave me a watch. And I don't actually wear watches, but he was really excited to make me into like someone who likes watches. And it was packaged really, really nicely. I mean, puppies is a great one too, of course. That's everyone's favorite, okay? Or a camera. Okay, these are really good. And I got this watch and it was packaged really, really well. And what made it special was that I didn't actually know what was inside it. So it was like wrapped up, it had this bow on it, it was this like perfect square box, it felt heavy. And when you're a kid, you're sort of just like, okay, like this is so exciting, you know? So think of your work as the packaging of a very good gift. I'm hoping that most of you here today already have a really good gift. And in this analogy, the gift is your actual projects and your work. But what you need to do to make it really special is actually put it in like nice wrapping paper, add a bow to it, write a card. So today we're going to focus on what it means to have a bow, wrapping paper, and a card for your work when you're interviewing. So let's get into it. What does that mean? It's like, great, we love gifts, but what does that mean, right? So what that really means is that you need to tell a good story from start to finish. And the story starts before they enter the room and it ends after they leave the room. So you really have to think about your work very, very holistically. What happens really often is that a lot of people enter this case study interview with a really short intro or a very long intro about themselves. And then they jump straight into their work. And then right at the end, they're like, okay, who has questions, right? And while that's pretty good, what it does is it leaves the person interviewing you with the opportunity to fill in gaps into your story. And you don't want to give that power away. You want to tell them the story you want them to know about you. So instead, you got to take them on a journey. So let's talk about your introduction. Branding is everything. And you might think, oh, I don't know how to write a good about me. What am I going to say about myself? But everything in your life can be used to talk about how it's added to your skill set. So how does your life experience impact you as a designer? What are the transferable skills? What do you love about being creative? What are you most proud of? All of these things tell the team a lot about you. So today I'm going to introduce you to three people, Amrita, Jose, and Maya. And keep those three names with you because today we're going to walk through their life. So first, let's look at Amrita. Amrita is someone who grew up in Brooklyn, lived in 4 homes over the span of 5 years. So in her intro, she might say, living in 4 homes over the span of 5 years honed my capacity to adapt and thrive in ambiguous spaces. What she's doing over here is she's telling them what her background is, but she's also explaining how her background has helped her be someone who is adaptable and works in ambiguous spaces. Two skills that are very good in the startup world. People in that world definitely want people who can adapt, who can work quickly, who can go with mixed direction. So this is what Amrita is doing. She's telling the people interviewing her, hey, I'm Amrita, I can adapt and I can work in ambiguous spaces. Now let's talk about Jose. Jose played sports throughout high school and college. So Jose might say, being a volleyball player at a state and national level throughout my teens and 20s, I'm driven by teamwork and ambitious goals. That's something someone who works at somewhere bigger might love to hear, or someone who's hiring for a manager might love to hear. What they're seeing then is, oh, this person has been part of teams and ambitious goals their whole life, and they're used to it, and they're telling me that they enjoy doing it. Next, let's look at Maya. Maya used to curate her Tumblr and volunteers at a bookstore. So Maya might say, meticulously curating my Tumblr themes and being at my local bookstore has instilled in me a relentless attention to detail, ensuring every element in my design serves purpose. The person listening to this will be like, okay, cool. Like Maya is really good at very specific details. And now throughout her uh, presentation, they're going to look out for that. They will look out for things that actually show attention to detail to actually make sure that Maya is not just saying she's good at that, but she actually is. So now I'm going to show you a real life example. This is my deck. This is the deck that I interview with. And while it might not be the same for you because experience differs, it still is a pretty good picture. So for my deck, I have 3 slides. 3 slides is a pretty good sweet spot of an intro. I would say you could also get away with 2 slides. I feel like one, then you're just talking over one slide for too long. And anything more than 3, you're talking too long about yourself, and your work needs to also speak for itself. So 3 is sort of the sweet spot. So what I do is in my first slide, which is the one to the left, that's the one where I have some images and I talk about how I've grown up in many different places in the world, moved around a lot, and I have a background in psychology, and I've also been building people in the same spaces for a really long time. In my next slide, which is the 5 recent highlights, I talk about the 5 cool things I've done in the last 5 years. And that could be anything from like personal things, like perhaps I bought a house and, renovated it on my own, or it was getting featured in apartment therapy, or it was speaking at Config in 2022. It could be a variety of things. And my last slide, which I only added to my deck, I want to say 2, 3 years ago, is what it's like to work with me. And I have the 4 Ls, which are 4 things that are really important to me. And this gives people a pretty good overview of what it's like to actually have me on their team. So as you can see on the slide, on the bottom left, there's something called a sweet spot, and you'll see this throughout the deck today. Those are essentially recommendations that you could follow. So to recap, for your intro, 3 slides maximum, make it very visual, use slideshow animations to reveal information as you speak about it. So for example, when I'm talking about apartment therapy, you see the photos of my apartment. Then when I say config, the config photo shows up, and so on and so forth. So really use Figma slideshow animations to your benefit because it'll go a long way. Okay. Miggy, I have a question for you now.
Yeah.
Can you give me your fun tidbit of your life that maybe we can try to workshop into how you would tell it in an intro?
So, fun tidbit about my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's difficult for me to try to convey to folks, I'm just going to start with the problem.
Sure.
What's difficult for me to convey for folks is that I've had a lot of different things where I've been a teacher, I've been a designer, I've been an illustrator. And like a fun little tidbit is that I was, once Tumblr famous for drawing on coffee cups, and it's,
I
it's a
wonder if we
part
were
of me.
Tumblr friends. Maybe we were Tumblr friends.
We were probably Tumblr friends. You
'Cause
probably
I was,
saw my
yeah, I
Breaking
was a
Bad
big
cup.
Tumblr girl.
Yeah. We were talking about Tumblr there in the chat. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I used to draw on coffee cups and I used to do a lot of like little illustrations here and there. And it was a lot of small illustrations that led up to like a larger project. And I find that usually is being irrelevant. But yeah, how would you rephrase that?
Yeah, so I think when I'm hearing you talk, I'm hearing a few powerful things. You've been a lot of different things, which means you're very good at wearing multiple hats. And I think that goes a very long way at a place that is high growth. So anything that's like startup world or like even mid-sized, they love that. They're like, oh, you can do a lot of different things and you're not afraid of it. I also think you being a teacher is so valuable because the most influential people in a person's life outside of their 5 closest friends and partner is a teacher that they've had growing up. I know that I had 3 that changed my life, and I think about them weekly, right? So I think you could really position that to say something in the last 10 years, I've done X, Y, and Z. And because I've done these things, it allows me to switch gears as much as I want and really cater to the person that we're speaking to, whether that's a student or that's a client who wants a really cool illustration on a coffee cup. Like it could be anything. So I feel like, I mean, anyone would be silly to not have you on their team, but you know that and I know that. So I think you could position that as a pro for being someone who's really good at switching context. You're on mute.
Sorry. I'm
Oh,
gonna add one more thing there. Like at Figma, one of the things that we value is how are folks makers. So when someone gets hired at Figma, they're often asked, how are you a maker? And
mhm.
it's pretty ambiguous, but it's these other things that you do that might not be necessarily related to the job, but also as you have been saying, like position it in a way that demonstrates how you're going to be able to apply some of those skills in the role, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've often heard people say, "Oh, I don't have any hobbies or interests. I just like play video games and take naps." And it's like you can still position that in a way that's funny. You can say outside of work, you can find me taking naps or be like, "I'm a professional napper." Like there are ways to make it funny that people get the humor, because the people you're speaking to, they also take naps. They also play video games. And you don't have to make up fake hobbies or a fake life in order to like impress people, but there is a way to brand it. And that's what this part is about. That branding is everything. So just how you communicate it is the game changer. Okay. So that takes me to talking about your landscape. Let's talk about it. So you really, really have to set the stage. Who did you work with? What was the class prompt? How long did it take? What role did you play? This is really important because if you go from an intro straight into your work, it's sort of a jarring experience for the people seeing this. They just heard about you and now you're telling them about this company or class you were in. So you really want to warm them into it. You got to set the stage, turn on the lights, let people think of this like a Broadway show. You like trickle in, you sit in your seats, you settle in, you take a photo of the playable book in front of the stage to post on Instagram, right? You like turn your phone on silent, hopefully, and then you're like, I'm ready now. So this is the same thing. You're asking all of these people to take out 45 minutes of their day to see your work. So how can you warm them up into it? So again, let's go back to our people. Amrita worked for an e-commerce startup of 23 people for the past 15 months. So what she could say in her landscape or after her intro could be startup Startup Inc. is a Series A company focused on making wholesale shopping easier for vendors. I led the design on our vendor experience alongside one PM and four engineers. The overall product org consisted of three PMs and another senior designer and 16 engineers. Today, I'm going to focus on sharing two projects with you from my time at Startup Inc. I've highlighted a few things here. So what the blue text does is it gives a one line short overview of what the company does. What the orange text does it shows you the place Amrita had in this company. And then what the green line does is it actually shows you what she's going to be showing you. So do you see how this drills in? It starts at what the company does, what Amrita was doing, and then what she's going to be showing you today. So then let's look at Jose. Jose is an architect transitioning into UX design and is self-taught. So Jose might say, with 7 years in architecture for my final project at General Academy, I applied my spatial skills to redesign a home renovation app in 3D Planner. I collaborated with three classmates, forming a cohort and conducted user research, experimentation, and prototyping. The result, 40% higher engagement. So what Jose's landscape is doing is explaining what his background is, explaining how he used that background into this new career he's trying to explore. And then in the orange, it actually says who else he worked with. In the green, it says what they did together. So you know what to expect. You know that, oh, I'm going to see some user research. I'm going to see some experimentation. I'm going to see some prototyping. And then he also throws in an extra in there by saying the result. What that does is the person listening is now excited. They're like, 40%? How did you do that? Now I want to see how you did that, right? Okay, so now let's go to Maya. Maya is a new grad and is now looking for her first time full-time role. So Maya might say, for my thesis project in my final year, I redesigned a local restaurant's online ordering system. This restaurant is the oldest in my locality and was struggling to keep up with its newer neighbors. Over one semester, I collaborated with restaurant owners, customers, my classmates, and my professor for feedback, real-time user research, and collaboration to mimic a working environment. In the chat, can you all tell me what the blue text is doing? What does the blue text tell you? What does the orange text tell you? And what does the green text tell you? I'm curious to see if we're all in the same understanding. I'll give it like 15 seconds, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, give a moment. They're on a little bit of a time delay. So the
Oh,
first one, yeah,
so
there we
true.
go. Okay. So the answers are coming in. The blue provides context, they say.
Okay.
Right? So blue is giving context, blue is the
Yeah.
problem, blue context. Yes. Orange is the solutions, and green is the method. So that's from
Yep.
Helene, Caitlin, Fernando, like everybody's dropping them in. So
Okay.
orange,
Those are some
someone
really
is
good.
saying collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, the precursor to the how might we.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so these are all strong answers, and I love to hear it because it means that we're on the same page. So the blue is not necessarily the problem. The blue is giving you context. Like, where does this thing exist? Oh, it's a restaurant in a locality that's struggling with newer restaurants, or it's a company in America, or it's for vendors who are trying to buy wholesale stuff. It basically grounds you in what the thing is. It's not necessarily the problem because the problem is about the project. Whereas the blue in this part, the context is about all of the work you're going to be sharing today. So now let's go to my example. So going back to my deck, this is what my deck looks like, or it did until a few months ago. So my landscape is 2 slides. One is the agenda, where I basically say, I'm going to give you one, an overview of Etsy. And then 2, I'm going to show you one project, which is on desktop. And 3, I'm going to show you another project, which spanned 1 year and it's on desktop and mobile. On the right side, the photo you see is of my next slide, which basically then is me explaining what the Etsy ads org structure was. I used to work at Etsy, and back then, the, the Etsy ads team essentially has 6 teams under it. Sorry, 5 teams under it. 2 of those teams are experienced teams, and 3 of them are backend teams. From the 2 experienced teams, I was in the buyer ads team, and I led design there. So this is exactly what I would say if I was in that room as well. This then tells everyone, okay, now they know exactly where Meher fits in this larger picture. So for the rest of my time with them, when I'm telling them more about my work, they're like, okay, yeah, we know in this map where Meher is. If I don't do this, people will find a map to put me in. And sometimes that's not the right map. So you don't want to let them do that. You want to tell them exactly where you fit in. So the sweet spot for doing landscape is roughly 2 slides. Try to keep it less words. And if you can, have some clear mapping and keep your voiceover pretty short. So as you can see for me, I created like this little map, and the team that I was on, I like highlighted it and put sparkle emojis next to it. Okay. So I've thrown in a bonus slide in here, but essentially, I want to show you the difference between a landscape slide and the introduction to your case study slides. This is the slides that you show before you actually get into a specific project. This is the slides you would have when you're trying to showcase a specific project. Even here, I think 4 slides is quite a lot. I have 4, and that works for me, but I think 2 is good enough. So what I do in these 4 slides is, because I was sharing 2 projects that are very different from Etsy, the first slide is my intro slide for that piece of work, which is like, okay, in so and so year, this is what I was working on, and this is why I was working on it. My next slide is my role in this project and the team that I worked with, my direct team as well as the partnering teams. I followed that with the impact, which is what the business impact was, which was, hey, we were tracking revenue and we were tracking these metrics. And I show them what that exact winning thing was. And then I tell them, for the next 10 minutes, I'm actually going to show you how we got to this impact. So I'm going to show you the first experiment, the second experiment, so on and so forth. So hopefully this gives you a good idea of the difference between having a landscape and getting into the case study. Those are how you present those things are a little bit different. But how do you just jump from your intro straight to this? What that does is, people don't actually know where you fit in yet. They don't know, or if they know what you did on this team, they don't know what this team does for the company. So you kind of want to tell them that. Okay. After this, traditionally, what comes is your case study. You go through it. for the sake of our time today, I'm going to assume that you all have a very good case study and we're going to jump towards the end of the case study. So let's talk about your recap, reflections, and learnings. This is the part where you need to close the loop. So you've just given these people a lot of new information about yourself, about your work, and you've been speaking for 30 minutes and you're probably tired. But just for another couple of few more minutes, you need to close the loop. Remind them of what you've presented and shared, reflect on the work, and tell them what you've learned. So again, let's go back to Amrita. Amrita ends her presentation on checkout redesign from her time at the startup by recapping what she presented and using it as a way to reflect and show learnings. So her two slides might look like this. On the left side, we have her first project, which was, let's say it's called vendor payments from 2022. She shares a quick one line about what the impact was. And then she says her three highlights and her three learnings. On the right side is her second piece of work. Some of her highlights might be it was great to redesign a system that hasn't been touched in 6 years. One of her learnings might be redesigning a system from scratch can actually take longer than you anticipate. So always add extra timelines on both sides. Now let's go to Jose. Jose presents his work with a quick reflection on learning slide. So his slide might look like this, which is just like one slide, highlights on one side, learnings on the other. And he can use animation to like show one or the other as he speaks to it. Some of the highlights for Jose might be collaborating with teammates and real life users and seeing the impact in real time was really incredible. Some of his learnings might be sharing early and often with consumers to gauge their feedback is really helpful because it lets you iterate a lot quicker. And now let's go to Maya. This is supposed to say Maya, not Jose. But let's say Maya concludes her presentation by recapping what she presented and using it as a way to reflect and show learnings. So on her first slide, it might say, thanks, Maggie. On her first slide, it might say, in this project, you saw user testing, iteration, two rounds of experimentation, ideation, prototyping, and workshop. What you can then do is use animation to highlight two things in red, which can be your learnings. And then you can use green to highlight two things that were great. So maybe for the two things that Maya learned, she can say, oh, the 2 rounds of experimentation actually didn't go that well because we only did each experiment for 1 week, and that didn't give us enough time to get the data. So next time, I wish that we could build the timeline to have extra time. For prototyping, she might say, oh, it was my first time prototyping, so I was quite slow. I did learn a lot, but I think this was not the right project to spend time on prototyping on, given that it was a tight um, uh, time period. For the highlights, she might say ideation. Oh, ideation went great. I worked with 2 other designers. They gave me a lot of feedback. It was lovely. And then she can also say, oh, I did do a workshop with my team as well, and the workshop went really well. They actually saw my POV and gave us fresh new ideas for our next round of experimentation. So this is one way of using animation and one slide to showcase not only all the things you just showed the people, but also what you thought went well and what didn't go well. So again, going to my deck, this is what my deck looks like. Mine is 3 slides, which usually I would say you don't really need to do that. I think 1 is fine. I did 3 because I added a what's next slide. I was presenting a piece of work that was a very small part of a very large project. So I wanted to showcase how that very small part then impacted the next 6 months. So I said, what's next? And I explained what would come next. And then I had my highlights and my learnings. Roughly, I would say spend like maybe 3 minutes on these slides total, all 3 of them. So it's not something you need to like speak about for really long. People will ask you more if they want to know more. So to take my own advice, let's recap. 1, you got to remember branding is everything. So your intro, whatever insignificant thing you think in your life is not important, try to think of it from a different lens. Number 2, set the stage, get them warmed up, tell them where you are, where you're coming from, what the work was, why was it important, give them that context. And lastly, close the loop. Make sure when you've given them all this information, you can circle it right back and close that loop. Now, this wouldn't be a seminar or like an hour, whatever, with me if I wasn't giving you some unsolicited advice and homework. So let me give you some advice on homework that has helped me over the last many, many years. Number 1, start journaling. If you don't already do that, I really, really want you to do that. Just try it for 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. It has so many good things for it, right? Like it's good for mental health, it's good for storytelling, observing your day, improves your capacity to articulate and talk about your work, day, and experiences. And the reason this is important to design is because a big part of the interview process is when you're in that panel and you're talking to these people for like 30 minutes, they ask you some pretty heavy questions like, tell me about a time someone gave you negative feedback and how did you handle it? And journaling helps you articulate stories without going on tangents about them. So start doing that. Number two, observe and recreate. This is my favorite one. And I think till today, sometimes I will do it. Take a screenshot of an app that you love, Spotify, Headspace, Linear, whatever you want it to be, and recreate that exact same screen in Figma. And try to do a different app each time. And as you're doing that, I want you to notice all the things that went into making that same screen. For example, the play button in Spotify a few years ago at least used to have a really, really massive drop shadow on it. And the name of the song, along with I think it was the name of the artist back then, they were the same size, but it didn't look like the same size because one of them was just brighter than the other. So doing things like this will help you observe that and it'll make you a better designer because it'll tell you why other people in the world make those choices and you'll start to see yourself think like that as well. And lastly is tell me a story. Write a short story from your day every single day. So you might say, oh my God, I did nothing today. I laid on my couch all day and I ate yogurt. That's fine. Write a story. 10 lines, 20 lines, doesn't matter. Tell me a story about how you ate yogurt today. And if you think I'm just saying this stuff, no, 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 I do this too. I used to be a big bullet journaling girl. No, that is not a photo of my bullet journal. It was never that cute. But the one on the right, that is a photo of my storytelling quad y-axis, x-axis, which is like this exercise, but it basically helps you become a better storyteller. You make a y-axis and an x-axis. On the top left, you write down 5 things that you're sensing in that moment. On the right side, you write down 4 things that you did today. On the bottom left, you write down a story from your day. On the right side, you draw a sketch of the day. And if you can do this 4 times a week, you will see how your storytelling skills are improving. And that goes a long way when you're actually talking to a room full of people. This brings me to the end of my advice for you all today. So I'm going to give it to Maggie for any questions, commonly asked ones, or just ones from the chat.
Oh, we have so many questions from the chat. I'm
Oh, wow. Okay. I am
organizing them
ready.
up.
I'm ready. Let's
I'm
go.
here. I'm here to support you too, Meher. Don't worry. I don't want you to feel like you are entirely on your own. So
Thanks.
let's move our way through. Let's take a look at the first question. It feels like portfolios and the hiring process are always changing. How do you stay up to date on best practices, and where is it that you learn? What are you learning from?
That's a great question. I think that the practices, the hiring processes are always changing, but what they're asking for hasn't changed in 15 years. They might call it something different, but it's all the same thing. So I would say try your best not to get caught into wanting to be trendy and just doing the thing
Mhm.
because you saw that it's trending or someone new is doing it. Portfolios as well. I think when you're early on in your career, it is very easy to have a first portfolio that looks like a lot of the cool ones you see out there, like with pastel colors or really cool gradients or like very big text right on the right on the landing page. That's okay. That's okay. Keep doing that until you find your style. And I think the second exercise, which I said, which is taking apps and recreating them, will actually help you find your style. You will start to see what you don't like and like. So instead of trying to stay up to date with best practices, I would say try to go deeper within and find your own style. In terms of who do I learn from, I spend a lot of time on Mobbin, just looking through app screens sometimes. I have like over 120 apps on my phone and I try to go through them. I'm someone who like download an app without thinking about it. And I'm like, let me like try this. I also like to read a lot, but I don't read design stuff, to be honest. I used to, and I used to think like that's the only way to grow. But I think the best inspiration and the most that I learn about design is actually not from design texts. It's from everything and the world around me, whether that's nature or reading a book about habits or reading a book about hiking or skiing or anything else. And that informs the way you think about your work as well. So hopefully
Yeah,
that answers your question. But
I
Miggy,
think
what about you?
oh no, no, I was just gonna agree with you. It's like you gotta look and see how people in other spaces do things, right? Um, there's gonna always be like timeless practices of storytelling, right? Of really just digging deep and telling the best, most precise and concise story. Sometimes it's a matter of, sometimes you have 45 minutes to tell the story, sometimes you have 5 minutes to tell the story, and being able to adapt to that is gonna really gonna support what is it that you have to say.
Mhm.
So in saying that you're reading other things, look and see how other methods of storytelling take place, find other ways of doing things, because it's going to make you stand out just a little bit more. The one thing that I did want to add to the sketching or taking examples from like existing apps, if you think about how folks would do the live drawing from real life, so drawing still lives, or drawing from models, right? They're observing light, shadow, form, composition, right? What are you doing when you're kind of like taking a look and for your own self doing these um sketches of other apps, or you're recreating them? You're noticing those details, right? You're paying attention to those details, and you're going to start to be aware of the details that you're going to find important. And when you understand which details are important to you, you are then going to know which details are going to be important to share with other folks, like about your work. So super, super great. Um, Next up, question: what are some common questions we should be prepared to answer during a case study presentation?
Oh, yeah, I think during the case study, if it's specific to your work, that can range, but some of the ones that people might ask is, can you tell me more about why you made X decision? So you need to be able to like talk about, let's say, why in the first experiment you had the button in the middle of the image, but in the next experiment you moved it to the right side. This is also their soft way of telling you that you didn't share something that was important. So it's a good thing for you to note and adjust for your next interview at wherever else. But in that moment, you can say, oh, actually, in the first experiment, we saw a lot of people didn't click on the image because the button was in the way. So we moved it to the bottom to see if it would hurt conversion of the button. That's like one way to do it. Outside of the case study interview, you like the panel, that also depends because they're assessing you on collaboration, leadership, research, how you work with a PM, and a few other things depending on the role. Something they might ask in collaboration is, tell me about your ideal relationship working with an engineer. Something that they might ask in leadership is, tell me about a time you had to forego your priorities in order to help somebody else with theirs. So you like want to be able to answer as a few of these, and I think using platforms like Claude and Dot and Google, it's really good to just ask what are some questions designers are asked in leadership interviews, and you'll see a list of them. And I
Mhm.
think those are really good ones to like journal on as well. Use them as journal prompts if you want to, but it helps you hone what you want to say as well. Making
Also, just
yeah.
present it to friends. Present your deck to someone who doesn't know anything, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll probably ask very obvious questions. And those obvious questions sometimes can, disarm you a bit. You're like, oh, well, I mean, isn't that obvious?
Yeah.
So present and test present to someone who just might not know, because there's a good chance that somebody on that panel is going to be lacking context.
Yeah.
So usually those questions going to be asked, as Meher mentioned, is that, they're looking for that context setting. So sometimes they're asking that question because you might have missed something as
Mm,
part of it. So, yeah, yeah, like questions that should be prepared. And as we mentioned, if you go through multiple interviews, collect those, make
yeah.
sure you write them down immediately after. And then that way you're prepared to decide whether or not you want to incorporate it into your next presentation or not. So great, great questions. Next up, What oh, here we go. Speaking about questions, what's an example for a good question to ask if you're asked if you have any questions at the end of your presentation or interview? So oftentimes, you go through a whole presentation, they're like, do you have questions for us? What's a good question to ask, Meher?
So remember that you're also interviewing them in a way, not in a way that's arrogant, but you also want to learn more about them. So let's say the person who you're speaking to is your future manager. You can ask, what are qualities that you really admire in your direct reports? And depending on what they say, it tells you a lot about what they actually appreciate in the people that they manage. Or if it's a PM that you might be working with, you can say, I want to know about your favorite time working with someone in my role. That tells you a lot about what they value as well. Let's say it's just a hiring manager call, or it's like a recruiter call way in the beginning, right? Something that I love to ask at the end of a call with a recruiter or a hiring manager is, can you tell me what are the three most important qualities for a person in this role to have? And depending on what they say, that tells you a lot about what they're looking for. It also tells you a lot about what you can and can't do. Like, let's say for me, if they said, oh, we're looking for a very strong visual designer who can do a lot of design systems work, I already know that is not my strength. So I will either tell them that because I'm not in a place in life where I want to do that kind of work. Or I will make sure that if that's the role I want to go into, I highlight that a lot more in my deck, if that makes sense. Miggy, what would you ask?
What would I ask? I think very similar things. I like what are the kind of values of the company. Sometimes I might ask like, what is the so things that you can also ask can signal to them that you're interested in for like the long haul. It's like what does like I'm trying to think of the proper wording for this, but like what kind
Like
of career
growth?
growth
Yeah,
opportunities are there for you in that role? So especially if you're starting early on,
mm-hmm,
what sort of positions or like what are the IC levels, individual contributor levels that you might be going into? And one
yeah,
thing that I want to highlight here is that recruiter that you might be engaging with is going to be giving you very relevant information.
mm-hmm,
Depending on the company that you're applying to, sometimes that recruiter might even give you a guide as to how to format your case study presentation. So I know folks that have applied to Meta right at the beginning when they're working with a recruiter, they give them a guide. And if you ignore that, and just say, "Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to wing it." You're really going to miss an opportunity. So sometimes it's all about matching things up, understanding if there's like a good fit. And as Meher mentioned, you're interviewing that company just as much as they're interviewing you. You don't really want to go through a process or do work that you really don't want to be doing.
yeah,
So just be kind of aware of that, and ask questions genuinely. Folks
yeah.
are applying, folks are hiring not to like fire you right away. There's a big investment in that hire. So to show your interest in the company, in the position, in the role, having those questions is going to be really important.
Yeah, keep in mind, like they're spending all these resources and time also talking to you. They also want to find the right person, you know?
Mhm.
So it's an investment on both sides. Of course, it feels like you have more to lose in that case, and I understand that, but keep that in mind and don't lie about stuff or fake
Yeah.
stuff. Like be your authentic self. And I know that's a very cliche thing to say, but truly.
Yeah, you want to truly be your authentic self in this
Mhm.
process. So we have another one here. I've always struggled with showing the impact of my work. I have a lot of design projects that are for clients. I don't necessarily know how my work has impacted their product, users, or business, apart from the fact that I provided a solution for the problem they approached me with. How do I best talk about my impact in that case? That's a great question.
Yeah, great question. So I think there's a few things you can do here. One, you can actually follow up with that client in, let's say, 3 weeks to like 4 weeks after you've like done a handoff and they've launched it, right? I'm not sure what the timeline here is. Do you hand off to engineers and then they build? But essentially, when it's launched, you can email them and be like, "Hey, it was great working with you. I see the work has gone live. For the sake of my own growth, I would love to know if you have any metrics that you were tracking, what are they looking like? you can just ask them and then you can include that in your deck. So that's one. Second thing you can do is, I think if you work at an agency, it's a little bit different. So if you're transitioning from agency to tech, like in-house tech, the way you would show impact is actually being able to, you would need to talk to the people internally that you work with at the agency and be like, hey, how do you guys think about the impact of this work? And it depends agency to agency, but when you're switching from agency to tech, you actually do need to show that impact, because in-house tech teams notice that. They're like, oh, this person came from agency background, the work culture is different. How are we going to make this work? So actually having an impact can be, give you a foot up. Another way to show impact is definitely just like once the work is live, you like the fact that the client accepted it means that you did something right. Right? So you can say that, oh, okay, this is what they looked at. You could also set up some personal goals. Like in the beginning, you can say, oh, this is the problem we were trying to solve. This is the hypothesis. The goal of this was to get something that is easy to use, that was very friendly, and that had I don't know, a lot of animation. So if those were your goals, you can also show that the impact was that you met those goals. Because essentially, at the end of the day, what impact is, it's showing that you've met the goal. And if
Mhm.
you outline the goal from the start, then you can say you met that goal at the end or in the beginning as well. Miggy, how would you think through this?
So I think one of the things that you mentioned is like understanding what the problem is at the beginning. When you're
Mm-hmm.
defining a problem, you also need to define what success may look like. Sometimes it's qualitative data where you actually, it could even just be the person like, wow, this is great, and that person is in an important role. You can get impact if it is a public product by finding what people are saying about the product, right? Oftentimes at Figma, when we envision something new, we sometimes write up what we hope to get from folks, right? Like what that tweet might look like, right? Like what is that successful tweet at the end? Like we want people to share this out. We want people to say this or that. Now, if you're doing work for another company, let's say if you're freelancing, you're going to have contacts there. So you want to develop a good rapport with the folks that you are working with. And sometimes you can follow up, be like, hey, like, how is that project going? Are there any success metrics that, you can share or you can find out about? There's been freelance projects in the past. And what I do is I normally follow up with my contact or like an art director that I might have worked with. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, how is that project going along? Do you have any quotes that I can share that can be demonstrate that qualitative data? Or if there is a quantitative number associated with it. A long time ago, I used to do e-learning courses where I would design these courses that would go out, and I would routinely just kind of check in and say, hey, how's it going? Maintain a good relationship with the working
Yeah.
partners. And, they would give me numbers. They'd be like, okay, this got deployed to hundreds of thousands of people in these areas, in these districts. And, that is something to show for the work. So
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning, as I mentioned, when you're laying out the goal or when you are identifying the work that you're doing, begin to envision what you want the success metric to be, whether or not that's going to be eyeballs, whether or not that's, and when I say eyeballs, I mean like, social impressions, whether or not that's actually going to be, qualitative feedback from the folks that you worked with. So if you partnered with a company, you can send them like a little survey, be like, hey, it'd be great if you let us know how that went down, if this was great
Yeah.
working with me. You can use those quotes as part of your project. One thing that you should do before getting a job, having a job, exiting a job is keeping a brag file for yourself. Every time that there's a win, every time somebody says something good about a project, anytime you are able to get a bit of data that demonstrates some marker of success,
Yeah.
and collect those and have those at the ready to include as part of your project. And as I mentioned, you get to design the metric at the beginning, like understand what it might be. Sometimes if I'm going to put out like a file on Figma's community and I want other people to duplicate it, I'm going to track that number. So
Yeah.
try to put things in spheres where you yourself will be able to track that metric one way or another. And like I said, you define it and then you get to kind of show for it.
Yeah. Like a really good example of this is if you have a personal project and you're like, how am I supposed to show impact for this? Let's say like for my senior thesis back when I designed this app called Hang, and I had these prototypes of this app called Hang, and I at the end of it took the prototypes of my like 10, 12 screens, whatever it was, and I made 15 of my friends use it and basically measured how long it took them to do a task. I was like, can you create an event for me in this app? And I checked the time frame of that. And then I asked them, how was the ease of use on a scale of 1 to 10? So my metrics were that 80% of the users were able to create an event within 30 seconds. 10% of the users found that this experience was helpful by 8% or whatever it is, right? So you can kind of like I don't wanna say fake the metrics, but low key fake the metrics, right? You just set your own goals and go from there, and you can use your friends to do that as well, and the people interviewing you, it's not that they think, "Oh, wow, she launched this app." That's not what they think. They're just like, "Oh, okay, you took the initiative to actually see the impact of your work and follow through and get additional feedback on it." So don't lie about a thing existing because they know, but it just shows your, initiative.
Mhm. 100%. All right, so we're running a little bit close on time, so I have one more question. And I think this relates to what you were saying. So if you're lacking in real
Mhm.
world projects, are dummy projects and imaginary briefs suitable to present in interviews? Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I think dummies are fine. Absolutely. I think a lot of people who graduate from college, that's kind of what they tend to have unless they've had like a lot of internships. Don't position it like it's a real company that exists in the world. I think there is a very good way that your dummy projects are also relevant to where you live. So, for example, in Maya's example, Maya's thesis was redesigning the ordering system for a local restaurant in her neighborhood. And she had said the problem was that this restaurant has been around for years, but it has a lot of newer restaurants near it, and its business is suffering because, well, gentrification, right? So like in Maya's case, she went and found something close by. So let's say if you're like, I need portfolio projects, think about companies or like places you go to. So one of my other friends who graduated from General Assembly many years ago, he used to go to this Indian home goods store and loved it. They didn't have a website, so he was like, "Can I build you one? Can I like design one for you?" So that's a really good way for you to like have dummy projects that still exist in the real world. Just make sure you're finding a problem. Is there a cafe you go to all the time, and do you notice that people always have to wait in line for the same order and they don't know what they're going to get? Is there a way you can solve that problem? So just like look, be be open to ideas in the world that you live in.
Yeah, yeah. Be aware of the things that are around you. So if you're lacking in real world projects, the one thing that I'll say is that if you're coming from university, your project is your project.
Yeah.
The company doesn't want to see what the professor assigned you. They want to see what you did. So it's up to you to recontextualize it, give it a better story, retool the areas that you think can be made better. The things that folks really like to see are iterations and prototypes. If you can create a better prototype, let's say if you don't have any like user testing, you can always make a prototype, test it against some folks. You can always make those improvements. The project is your own at that point. How you recontextualize it, how you structure it, how you talk about it is
Mhm.
all also part of it. So it's not just the work itself, it's
Mhm.
the story of the work. It's the craft of the work. If you are going to pay attention to certain details, that's what you want to highlight. That's what you want to demonstrate. If there's
Yeah.
something new that you're applying, some novel approach, or you're using it as a skill builder, things that you have learned along the way in building something and iterating upon it, in sharing it out with others, all of those are learnings that are really valuable. So be honest. You can call the project a speculative project, but it has to have a real reason for existing. You can't
Mhm.
just say, oh, I redesigned Spotify. There needs to
Okay.
be,
Sure.
like in the context of something more meaningful. It needs to solve a problem. You can have it in the context of something else. So try not to. Those things run into problems when you associate them with an existing company. It lacks that context of the company. One thing that I would say with that is there's always opportunities to demonstrate the accessibility of something, right? So
Yeah.
if you're finding an app or something, try to decide like a new device to demonstrate. Try to find a new way to make that more accessible. Look beyond just the redesign and try to find more concrete solutions that you can provide. So with that, once again, thank you, Meher, for being
Thank
on the
you for having
stage.
me. I hope this was helpful to all those people who are with us here. As always, Mickey, lovely working with you. And thank you, Alex, for being in the chat moderating.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, the chat is going wild. Everybody is saying thank you so much. I know that this is going to be helpful. And just so you all know, the recording will be sent to you. Thank you, Alex, for being here. Thank you, Meher, for being here. And thank you all. I
Of
hope you have
course.
a wonderful rest of the week.
All right. Bye.